Okay, so now it's time to introduce the speakers for our first session. It's called Forging the Future, Efficiency and Renewables. During this session, remember to think of questions and enter them into Mentimeter, and also we'll take the comment cards, the question cards as well. So first on our panel this morning is Lee Hayes Byron, who is going to discuss energy burden and solutions in our community. Lee Hayes is the director of the IFAS Extension Sarasota County program. And that program brings research-based information into our community, and it's a great resource. Recommend them to all of your friends. Spread the word. Following Lee Hayes, we're going to have Amber Whittle, and she'll tell us about energy efficiency and the Florida Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. Forgive me. She currently serves as the executive director of Southface Sarasota, a resilience nonprofit focused on energy sufficiency. That word's going to get me every time. Climate change and social equity and health. Following Amber, we're going to have Bill Johnson, who'll touch on solar energy and battery storage as a resiliency tool. Bill is the owner and president of Brilliant Harvest, LLC, which was founded in 2009 to serve solar hot water and solar electric clients, which also earned a certification by the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. After that, we'll hear from Andy Tugendhat. I'm going to completely butcher that last name, Tugendhat, about the Inflation Reduction Act. After retiring from energy industry 10 years ago, Andy has been an active volunteer in the Sarasota community, including IFAS Extension Sarasota County. He has also helped the nonprofit organizations and low-income communities save money through energy conservation, energy efficiency, and renewable energy initiatives. And then we're going to finish off with Philip Tavill, or Tavill. Forgive me if I misspelled that. I just threw both of those in there, who will tell us about their partners for Green Places nonprofit energy efficiency grant projects. Philip has been president and CEO of Children First, Sarasota County's exclusive Head Starter provider since 1996. So let's go ahead and welcome our panel, please.
Good morning. All right.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So my name is Lee Hayes Byron, and I'm the director of Sarasota County IFAS Extension, and I am so excited to see you all in person, and this is literally my favorite day of the year when we've done this for so many years. So I just love this opportunity to connect. So the panel today is focused on energy, and I'm going to start off by discussing the concept of energy burden, and I need a clicker. Do we have a clicker? Just tell you when? On the podium. Okay. Got it. Thank you. Okay, we're going to try to do it informally, so give me a second. So I'm going to talk to you about why the first panel of the day is talking about energy, what matters, some equity issues here in Sarasota County, and what we've been doing to try to address it. So the first thing is energy efficiency just has so many benefits. It's truly the real sustainable solution in my mind. It addresses all the pieces of sustainability. From an environmental perspective, it reduces greenhouse gases as well as reduces air and water pollution. It provides important cost savings and stability for utility bills, and creates local jobs. And then, oh dear. We're going to turn the others off. Okay, thank you. And then the pollution reduction and indoor air quality benefits provide real, true health improvements, particularly for cardiovascular diseases and respiratory issues. And then our utility system also benefits from energy efficiency through reduced demand and deferred infrastructure investment needs. So I think most of you have probably seen this image, but it conveys an important message about making sure that people have access to the same opportunities and aren't unfairly burdened in ways that others aren't. And I think all know, maybe it's this that's the problem. It might be this. Sarasota County has a history of inequity, including segregation, that is still having impacts today. Just an example is that while 6% of our children are living in concentrated poverty, 48% of those children are Black. And so one of the things that is particularly impactful is housing affordability. And this is something everyone's talking about, right? Everyone is feeling this difficulty right now. But what does it really mean for our local families? And if you look at that, that graphic on the left, it shows that in 2019, more than half of our households who rent their homes are paying 30 to more than 50% of their income on their housing costs. And we know that costs have gone up significantly since then. A part of that housing cost that's often overlooked is the energy cost, the utility cost, so energy and water. And we evaluated some Department of Energy data that found that low-income families in our community, in our county, can be spending upwards of 13 to 19% of their income just on their energy bills. And then we look at all of the other housing costs as well. So just those energy bills are up to 19% of those costs. And the median income families in our community are only paying 2 to 3%. So that difference is really hard for those families that are already struggling. And that's partially the result of older, more inefficient housing stock that those families are living in. The state of Florida just completed a study that had more detailed analysis of this in our county, and it shows that that energy burden is across our geography. You can see all of those circles in different ways, and it found that the average annual energy costs are over $2,000 per year. It's also a statewide problem. This shows you on the left the energy burden for owners, and on the right the energy burden for renters. This is happening everywhere, and it's a challenge for everyone. The report also found, though, because we're solutions-oriented today, that there are huge opportunities, huge benefits that could be found from implementing energy efficiency programs. Just a 1% increase in application of these efficiency measures, in participation in these programs, could save our low-income families $5.1 million in Florida. Just 1% increase. And it's those efficiency programs that we are working hard to try to implement in Sarasota County. Since 2012, we've been implementing our energy upgrade program that educates on ways to save within the home and then actually provides them with devices that help them implement those savings right away. So that bag that you see on the right, they go home with that after one of our workshops. In 2016, we really focused that effort on our low-income families, and we also added a volunteer component that uses energy coaches, some of which are here today. We're really grateful for our volunteers who go into affordable housing units and directly support those families and install the devices immediately. The program has reached over 3,700 residents who are now saving nearly $400,000 per year as a result of these programs. We were also fortunate to get a grant from the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services in order to help affordable housing providers, the owners, the landlords that many of these renters are living in order to upgrade their units. This year, 3 housing providers were granted rebates that allowed them to replace 20 refrigerators and 19 air conditioning systems, and the families that live in those units are going to be receiving those savings for years to come. We also recognized that there are some challenges for nonprofits in our community in order to save on the operating costs, and developed the program Partners for Green Places in partnership with 4 of our local foundations, and went for a national grant that allowed us to create this program that does audits of the nonprofit facilities and then provides grants in order to help them make the improvements that will allow them that savings for the nonprofits going forward. Thanks to our local foundation and donors, the program grew to over $800,000 and has served 16 nonprofits, 4 of which have received solar installations as well as the efficiency measures. And phase 2 has been funded and is now working with Southface's Good Use program in order to continue serving our nonprofit community. Philip's going to tell you a lot more about their experience with that, but we wanted you to know that that program is still going forward and we're really excited about it. So I had a lot to share, but I wanted to go through quickly so everyone else has a chance. We think that energy efficiency is this huge opportunity in order to benefit both our local community as well as the global environment. There are a lot of resources out there on this topic, so we've listed several of them here. They'll be in the slides that'll be on the website so you can learn some more. But we really feel that low-income families and nonprofits are a really important place to focus that work, and are really proud of some of the accomplishments we've had. So I hope you all will join us in this effort and build the momentum on energy efficiency. I think it's Amber's turn.
All right. So for the last 40 years, Southface has kind of felt like the Pied Piper of energy efficiency, while sitting next to our charismatic megafauna of solar. So I was really glad to see in your polling that energy efficiency was right up there. That made me very happy. So when I got into energy efficiency, this is something that I didn't really know, and I didn't know if everybody knew this, but buildings take up 40% of our energy use in the United States. It's different between commercial and residential, but this is something that we can do. We can control this. There are lots of other parts of climate change that we can't, right? We don't really have direct control over how much subsidies fossil fuel companies get, or how much even land development is developed. But we can actually control the buildings that we're in. And so that's what we really focus on. When you look at the energy use in a building life cycle, 69% of it is in the actual operations. So again, we don't have a lot of control over where our concrete comes from as new technologies are making less energy intensive concrete, but we can control how our buildings are run and designed so that they run better. So in residential and commercial energy use, you can do things like update your lighting, your Energy Star appliances, you can reuse and upcycle, heat pumps, insulation. There's a lot you can do, and it's a lower point of entry than solar. Solar, hopefully, is your ultimate goal, but as you get to that, you can decrease your energy bills just by doing upgrades. When you get a new appliance or something, look for Energy Star. And another plug for your landscape, because this is another one of my great loves, and you know that Sarasota is all about our water quality. 30 to 40% of our energy use in the US is for water and wastewater treatment. So as we use 50% of our potable water for irrigation in Sarasota County, you can decrease the amount of our energy usage that the city and county use just by using less water for your irrigation. And the county has a Strive for 10% plan, which is if we decrease our water usage by 10%, we'll have enough water going forward. So as Lee Hayes talked about, our energy burden for low-middle income households, in Tampa, 21% of Tampa households are energy burdened. And this is important because the energy burdened households do not have the extra income to increase their energy efficiency, but they're the ones who need it the most. So one of the ways we look at it is through our advocacy program. We have someone here in Sarasota that's sitting here on New College campus, and she really works on the Florida Energy Efficiency Conservation Act. This is an act that is in statute, and then what is actually implemented is done by rulemaking. So as you can see, the Florida average is 20% of the national average. So our utilities can do a lot better in providing rebates, so it can be weatherization, audits, or appliance upgrade rebates. Those are just some of the examples of what we do, and those can really affect low-middle income households too. So if you guys are interested in this wonkiness, the Public Service Commission is an appointed commission, and they take emails or calls that you can say that you want more energy efficiency in their planning, and this is ongoing right now. It's still open for comments as we speak. So Lee Hayes was talking about Partners for Green Places, which is merging into Good Use. Partners for Green Places was modeled on Good Use and then was really focused on Sarasota County, and now it's rolling back into our national program. This program's been around for 15 years. We have done 545 projects with 450 different nonprofits in 27 states. So the basis of good use is that each nonprofit spends a lot of money on their operating costs, and people really don't like to pay for taking out the trash or for keeping the lights on. And so this is a way that in perpetuity, we can help our nonprofits take that money and put it back into their mission. So you can see our partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, which we've done the Lee Wetherington one here. It's impacted over 10,000 children, and our work has provided 1.7 million additional meals each year that are served with our food bank partnership. In addition to that, they save 31% of their utilities, and that's a 34% average carbon reduction along with the water save. So you can see the metrics at the bottom, but it's a really, really important project that is going into phase 2 here with support from a lot of our local foundations. So what you guys can do, as I said, this can be an easy bar of entry. You can, during building, even the building phase, the design phase is the absolute best time to really think about energy efficiency. So while you're designing your house or you're updating your house, remodeling it, or even when you have to do emergency purchases, you know, my mom's fridge just went out, so she had to go get a fridge. You can make those choices at that time, and that includes your landscaping. If you put in Florida Friendly, you don't need to irrigate your lawn, you don't need to mow your lawn, you don't have those emissions also. So you can also advocate for additional utility company rebates with the Public Service Commission, and you can take advantage of tax rebates, which Andy will be talking about next. Thank you.
All right, can everybody hear me okay? So before we get started, I love the term megafauna. I've never been called that, and I guess that's a compliment. I know I should lose a little bit of weight, but wow, okay. Yeah, the reality is, you know, when we talk about solar with our clients, we actually do spend a lot of time talking about energy efficiency, because one of the things we always tell people is, look, we can put enough solar to offset 100% of your energy consumption in most cases, but you're much better served in terms of the investment ROIs by doing better insulation, LED lights, you know, all of those kinds of things. So today I want to talk a little bit about the value of energy resiliency. You know, we talk about the valuation of solar and battery systems, and what's the paybacks and stuff like that. And typically that's a discussion of economic value. You know, we look at things like, what's the value of the kilowatt hours that are produced that offset your utility bill, and how much is that worth, and how many years is it going to take to pay for itself, and that stuff. And for commercial clients, we look at demand savings. There's a whole separate discussion that we can have on that. That graph to the right shows kind of what a demand shaving profile looks like. The red there is the actual utility demand, and that's being offset by the battery and the solar together. The blue on the bottom of the curve is the battery charging, and the blue above the curve is the battery discharging to keep the utility demand flat. And by doing so, in this case, they saved about 50% on their demand fee for that period of time. But there's also other kinds of financial benefits, right? There's direct incentives. We're going to be talking about the IRA. And also for homeowners, there's also increased property values. Another area that we talk about in terms of value is community and environmental value. And there's a lot of different ways in which solar and battery systems can help the local community. There's things like job creation, having a skilled workforce that's highly paid, and the fact that those jobs cannot be outsourced to foreign countries. Those are very valuable. The fact that we're keeping the energy spending money that we're putting into those energy systems isn't going out of state. Today, something like 90% of the energy money that we spend, whether it's on vehicles or on buildings, is being sent out of the state of Florida. So by doing solar and battery systems and keeping that money in state, you're helping the local economy. Obviously, things like CO2 emissions, that's a hugely important thing. But then we also talk about like recyclability of materials. The solar panels, the batteries, even the copper wire, we're going to eventually get to a point where we have essentially a closed circular economy where all of those components can be recycled and put into new systems, right? Lithium-ion batteries absolutely can be recycled. Solar panels are silicon, glass, and aluminum. Obviously copper wire. And then, the other big thing, and this is particular to rooftop solar, is the reduction in raw land development. Utility scale solar is wonderful, but it does use raw land. And we need to be cognizant of that, especially given the amount of development that's taking place. I happen to be very personally involved in some of the land conservation efforts because my wife is the head of Conservation Foundation, the Gulf Coast. So we know firsthand what we're up against in terms of conserving these lands. So those are kind of traditional ways that we talk about, valuation, right? And so what I wanted to talk about today a little bit more was about resilience and how battery and solar together can encourage resilience. And the question is, well, okay, you say that these systems are resilient, but how did your systems actually do in Hurricane Ian? And we have nearly 200 systems installed from basically your Clearwater area all the way down to Naples. And the reality is that something like 98% of them fared just fine, had no issues at all, and operated throughout the storm. Actually, 100% of our battery systems that we have installed, we have like 65 battery systems installed so far. 100% of those survived the storm with no issues. We did have 6 arrays get damaged from debris. And then we had 3 that actually had solar panel removal. We think 2 of those were actually from tornadic winds that took place. In both cases, the panels were found more than 110 feet downwind of where the solar array was, and we had components that literally were sheared off and stuff. And then we had one system down at the south end of Pine Island that actually was within the eye wall of Hurricane Ian for 8 hours, and we think they had sustained winds of 155 miles an hour. In those cases, all kinds of other things take effect, right? Was the array hit by debris? Was there metal fatigue? The duration of loads and things like that. And we actually are in the process of doing a forensic investigation of kind of what happened with that system, because we do want to be able to design systems that can withstand even those most severe conditions. And why is that? The reason is because, if we're going to be doing systems for emergency shelters and stuff like that, that's a critical kind of capability. That system's got to survive. So this is what one of these kind of energy curves looks like during an actual outage. Again, the red is utility, blue is the battery, and then the kind of gray overlay is the state of charge of the battery. So you can see, on September 28th, the grid went down and the battery kicked in and took over loads for the house, charged up during the next day, and discharged at night, and they went for a full week, without power from the grid. And then at the end of the week, grid power was restored, and they went back up to 100% state of charge. So this is what it actually looks like, and they were able to run some fairly big loads, 5, 7, 8 kW, which is significant. We talk about this, and it's like, okay, fine, these systems do work. We actually can get them to survive. And when we add all the pieces together, this means that we can deploy solar and battery systems for things like emergency operations, right? There is critical infrastructure in our community that needs to be served. There's also critical staff, right? These people that are, reacting to these storms. Sarah was telling me that she worked for, weeks after the storm and barely got any sleep at all. And boy, wouldn't it be nice if she could come back to a place and get a hot meal and a hot shower, actually maybe be able to sleep in some air conditioning or something like that after a storm, because the community is without power. Also in storm shelters, obviously, in a room with 500 people, that's wonderful that they're protected and they're safe, but man, would it be nice if they actually had some lights and some air conditioning and stuff like that. Those places get pretty rancid pretty quickly. And then finally, you've got things like portable power systems, right? There's stoplights that are out, pump stations, lift stations that might need power. You can put battery and solar systems on trailers and actually roll them out to a site and not have to have staff running around, 24/7 refilling diesel generators. These systems actually do work. There's a company here in Sarasota, Gizmo Power, that's working on a solution like that. And then, of course, medical needs, and that's true for both storm shelters, but also, in residential situations, folks have, various medical equipment that they need to run, and so, solar and battery systems can be deployed in these scenarios. And when you add it all together, we actually can make a value proposition that hits the kind of, the economic aspect, the community aspect, the environmental aspect, and the resilience. And so I like to say that, solar and battery systems are a win, 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 right? On all of these different fronts, we can actually make our community better, give people good jobs, and actually, when you actually look at the numbers, the total life cycle costs of these systems are lower than traditional diesel generation and stuff like that. But it's important to understand also that each project is unique. As I like to say, cookie cutter solutions are great for making cookies, but when you're looking at doing solar and battery for your building or for your operation, you really do need to look at the individual characteristics, look at your energy consumption, and that's a tricky process. So thank you very much.
He's doing that. There we go. Just a reminder to put questions in the Menti system as you're going, and we will pull them up toward the end. All right.
Nope, go back. I didn't do that. All right. All right, good morning, everyone. As noted on the slide, I'm going to cover some of the major energy provisions in the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act. Go ahead. The IRA is the most significant climate bill in U.S. history. It will significantly... Wow, I didn't need to do much work this morning. It will significantly accelerate the transition to clean energy and the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. The CBO estimates 10-year federal spending of around $370 billion associated with this bill. However, because much of the spending is for tax credits, which are not capped in the bill, Credit Suisse recently estimated that federal investment could be as high as $800 billion, with private investment doubling the total impact to as high as $1.7 trillion. So a very big impact. There's way too much in the IRA to cover today, so I'll cover a few highlights. There are significant grants, loans, and credits for domestic manufacturing and production with an intent to create a North American supply chain for all things related to clean energy. Things like silicon cells and solar panels, lithium and EV batteries, green hydrogen, and many others. Several companies have already made major manufacturing plant investment announcements since this bill was passed. As we don't have a lot of manufacturing in our region, I'm not going to cover this set of policies any further in my prepared comments. Three other key areas of focus are energy efficiency, clean energy, and clean vehicles, and I'll cover a few policy highlights for each in future slides. The IRA will benefit many different stakeholders, including individual homeowners, businesses, nonprofits, local governments, and farmers. There is also a strong environmental justice component. Next slide. So it's always good to start with energy efficiency. The best and cheapest form of electricity is that which is never needed to begin with. For commercial buildings, the IRA provides an increased incentive to improve efficiency by at least 25%. For new construction, the improvement is measured against the current code minimum. For existing buildings, the improvement is measured against the building's current energy use intensity. As an example, a project that meets prevailing wage standards and improves energy efficiency by 25% for a 10,000 square foot building would get a $25,000 tax credit. This could represent a significant portion of the investment required to achieve the efficiency gains. Nonprofits, including government entities, can indirectly benefit from this policy by assigning the tax credit to the project designer and having them pass along some or all of the savings. New home construction will qualify for $2,500 tax credits if the home meets Energy Star standards, and $5,000 if it meets Zero Energy Ready standards. Tax credits for certain efficiency improvements, such as windows, doors, and interior lighting for existing homes, will increase to 30%, up from a current 10%, up to a cap of $1,200 per year. The cap is $2,000 for heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. Finally, there's a big bucket of Department of Energy money that the states will be able to use to implement energy efficiency grants. Most of this will be focused on low and middle income households. Next. The term clean energy represents a lot of different things in the IRA, but given that we are in the Sunshine State, let's focus on solar and battery storage. The solar investment tax credit that many of you are familiar with was scheduled to phase down and out. With the IRA, the ITC is renewed, bumped back up to 30%, and extended for 10 years. Battery storage will now qualify for the 30% ITC, whether coupled with solar or not. There are some new potential sweeteners to the ITC. 10% for domestic content. Right now, that's going to be hard to meet, but should be possible if the North American supply chain revs up as expected. 10% for energy communities. This is an incentive to build clean energy facilities where old fossil facilities once existed. The extent of applicability to Florida will depend on how the final rules are written for this. Finally, there will be some allocated environmental justice credits, which could add another 20% to the ITC for low-income housing projects. So you could potentially have a low-income housing solar project supplied with domestic materials that qualifies for a 60% ITC. How sweet would that be? The next two policies are new and really important. Nonprofits, including government entities like schools, municipalities, and tribes, and 501c3s, will now be able to qualify for the ITC for the first time through a direct pay provision. Up until now, only federal tax-paying entities could benefit from the ITC. Tax-paying organizations will now be able to sell their tax credits to non-related entities for cash, and that revenue will be tax-free. So a company without a significant federal tax burden can still easily benefit from the clean energy ITC. The production tax credit is an alternative to the ITC, where you get a tax benefit for the amount of power produced instead of for the project investment. Historically, the PTC has been primarily used in the wind industry. It is similarly extended and expanded. Finally, if you are a homeowner and you want to go solar or install battery storage, you can get a 30% credit for your investment on your federal taxes. The IRA has mixed news for buyers of electric vehicles. On the one hand, the $7,500 EV tax credit for new cars is extended and is no longer limited by a per manufacturer vehicle cap. And there is a new tax credit of up to $4,000 for used EVs. On the other hand, there is a stringent domestic sourcing requirement for batteries and materials, which some car makers say they won't be able to meet for several years. Keep an eye out for the detailed rulemaking to see how this gets sorted. There are also income and vehicle price cap limits which apply in order to qualify for these credits. Although there are tax credits for the installation of EV chargers, these are limited to rural and low-income communities, so won't apply to many of our areas. As you can see, The Inflation Reduction Act will have a huge impact on our economy and environment. Stay tuned for many more details to be ironed out in the final rulemaking process. And please consult a tax expert before making big investments. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Philip Tavill from Children First, and we're going to start with a quiz. You heard Amber and other panelists talk about Partners for Green Places. How many of you, by a show of hands, had knowledge of the Partners for Green Places program prior to today? Okay, so less than 50%. So there's a lot to take away, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit. But it's a great name. It's Partners for Green Places. So your volume will determine how quickly I go. The louder, the better. I say partner for, you say green places. Partner for Green Places. That's pretty good for a mid-morning crowd. So I'm going to talk a little bit about bringing sunshine to children first. And a little name checking just right up front. A while back, I got a call from John Thaxton, and he said, I have a question for you, and I just said yes. And it's turned out extraordinarily well for us. And I'd also like to name check, and this is our 15-second commercial break for Brilliant Harvest and Bill Johnson and his crew, and you'll see this, you see the photograph, 286 solar panels on our main facility on Orange Avenue in Newtown. And you guys were just phenomenal and incredible to work with. And also, Andy, thank you for all of your guidance as our volunteer consultant extraordinaire. Just guided us every step of the way, and it's turned out literally perfectly. So thank you, Andy. So we're a little bit past year one, but we're going to use a year one update. And if you don't mind, I'm going to go back to when, well, ready? Next one. I'm going to go back to when we got that call about being a pilot project. We were one of 3 organizations that were selected. Historic Spanish Point, which is now a part of Selby Gardens, as well as Harvest House, and of course, Children First. And what we did within Children First, because we have multiple sites throughout Sarasota County, we evaluated our buildings to see which would give us the best return on investment for this pilot project. And as it turned out, it wasn't our oldest building because we had done some work on that building in the early 2000s that had really raised its efficiency. Turned out to be our building in Northport, which we opened in 2007. And we determined this would give us the best return on investment. And after we made that decision, what we benefited from Partners for Green Places was this very intensive energy audit by one of the firms that Partners for Green Places funded on our behalf. And there was a ton of information. It was really exciting to page through and get a much deeper understanding around the world of energy efficiency. And what I'd break down for you, because this is really applicable whether you have a commercial building like ours or it's your home, we were learning about what was a low investment with either a low, medium, or high return. What's a medium investment, low, medium, high? You can guess the next one, right? So what we were really looking for were those low and medium investments that would give us the highest returns possible. And what we did in Northport, because of that exhaustive energy survey, was to follow specific recommendations, and everything from faucet aerators that reduced our water consumption by 25%, to low E film, to some improved HVAC, to weather stripping, nothing that was tremendously expensive. We reduced, and you can see at the bottom, our costs by 20 to 30% at our Northport facility. Here's a message I'd like you to take away today. It was an energy savings. It reduced our footprint on our world, and those dollars go to mission. It's a phenomenal formula. It's just a wonderful thing. Andy? So phase 2 was at our Dr. Elaine Merritt Early Learning Center on Orange Avenue between 17th and 18th. It's our main facility. It's a beautiful place. I welcome you to come tour. You can see solar panels, and you'll see pictures of really cute kids in a minute, and you can see really cute kids. It opened in 1995, and prior to this, we had taken a step. When I arrived, the building had this shingle, green, dark asphalt roof, and the attic was, you know, like a sauna kind of thing. If our facilities guys had to go up, it was just terrible. And we ended up needing a new roof, and we put a metal roof on, a white metal roof, where I learned all about reflectivity and emissivity. And just that lowered our costs. We got an FPL rebate. It made a huge difference. And I think also, Bill, it helped us in terms of being able to put in those 286 panels. So we called the roof project Putting a Hat on Children First, and we call the solar project Bringing Sunshine to Children First. And it's hard to see some of the details, but it's amazing the impact that that has had on our environment. It's amazing in terms of our efficiency. And again, a message I'd like you to take away, those dollars go to meals for our children. Those dollars go to diapers and formula and critical things for fulfilling our mission well. Andy, if you would go to the next slide. Total electricity consumption percent supplied by solar, the target was 90 to 100%, and the 178 megawatts of solar production supplied 95% of a 16,000 square foot building built in 1995's electricity consumption in that year. Just an unbelievable return on investment because of Partners for Green Places. Andy? The mentioned really cute kids. So we have gardens. We really work with our children and our families to carry the message forward. You heard Amber talking about, in particular, renters and the utility costs that they face, never mind how rents have increased. When you layer those increased utility costs, and the majority of the families that we serve are folks who live in very dire economic circumstances. So it's our goal to carry this message forward, certainly at an event like today, but also for our families, also for our staff, and to make them aware of the programs that are available that can help them out personally, create more independence and self-sufficiency. Next slide, please. So this is one of the posters that we display proudly. You can see that we have the 20 to 30% aforementioned savings in Northport, a 90% reduction of fossil fuel energy use on our main campus, and a 100% commitment to sustainability. I go back to that earlier example of that exhaustive energy audit that we had. We took that report and we looked at all of our facilities. So it wasn't a one and done. It was, let's go to all of our facilities. Faucet aerators are easy to do. 25% reduction in Northport. Amber spoke about the reduction through irrigation. We can just do it in our homes. It's something that we're very, very proud of, conversion to LED. Andy, if you would. So looking towards a brighter future, not just for Children First, but our contribution as an organization to our community at large. We are going to see increased performance, not just because of our solar array and all the other things that we've done, but we have found donors who are willing to invest, and we have found foundations who are willing to invest because they're cognizant. They know that these dollars come back to mission. So we have been able to replace old HVAC units with heat pumps. And we have been able to reduce, and of those 12 months where we had just these incredible savings, February was our toughest month, and it's because we had to use heat. We have 6-week-old babies. Those are our youngest babies. You turn on the heat. That was before we had some of those heat pumps, so it'll be interesting to see what happens next. A commitment to sustainability. We are lowering our impact on the environment upon which we all rely, and the benefit is we are able to invest these dollars directly back into the children and families that we serve. Thank you all so much.
Q&A portion of this panel. So go ahead and get your questions in. And remember that if you have a question for a specific speaker, please list their name as well. If we don't get to all the questions, our attendees can speak with our speakers during breaks, during lunch, and so please feel free to take advantage of that as well. So what's our first question? Are there any new solar technologies on the horizon that are less dependent on land use or roof installations?
You guys want me to take that one, I guess? Okay, here we go. That's actually a great question. One of the things that we do work on is what we call building integrated photovoltaics, where the solar panels themselves are actually part of the architecture of the building. We've done some residential projects, and we've done a couple commercial projects where the solar panels are actually part of the design of the building, either as like an atrium or an awning or something like that. So they don't use roof space, although frankly roof space is really the best location to put solar. As Philip mentioned, the project that we did at Children First was on a standing seam metal roof. We were able to install that entire system without a single penetration of the roof. So there's literally no risk of any water intrusion ever with that design. And that kind of combination of the standing seam metal roof with solar is really a fantastic way to do it. But absolutely there are solutions that do like canopy structures. We did a project for the city of St. Petersburg for the new St. Pete Pier, where they have an outdoor marketplace on the approach to the actual pier itself, and there's a very large solar canopy that provides shade, for the folks that are in the marketplace. So yes, there are ways to do building integrated photovoltaics. Thanks.
All right, our next question. Excuse me. Will the speakers on the panels be able to share electronically to the attendees their presentations after the event?
Yes. They are going to be on the website for the workshop, so that's true for all the presentations for today.
That's
Look on the back of your name tag, there's a QR code. If you scan that, it'll take you to a page with all of the presentations, the agenda that's being provided.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next question. What can be done with disposal of older appliances and technology, and what does that impact?
Do you want to do the solar part and I can do the appliances? Yeah, sure. Okay, so the appliances can be recycled through the construction and demolition debris recycling program through Sarasota County. So you'd want to call Waste Management or the 311 Connect on his shirt to ask about how to get those types of materials picked up and recycled. And that's really important to think about. You don't want to just put them on the curb and not know where they're going to go, because there is a recycling program that's out there for that. And I think Bill was talking about that the more these technologies are used, the more those markets for those after-use purposes will be developed, and we hope that those will be developed in a local or regional fashion to build our local economy. Do you want to talk to the solar side?
And battery side of things, absolutely, we're still kind of in the very early stages of this. I mean, we started in 2009 installing solar, and so even our oldest systems are only about 10 or 12 years old at this point, and they've got another 10 or 12 years of lifespan, and that's true with battery systems too. But as the volume of these projects grow and as they get older and start to kind of end of life, you're going to see the development of a serious recycling industry around batteries and solar panels, because the materials inside are perfectly good. The lithium-ion material can be recycled, and same thing with the silicon in the solar panels. And we just have to get to the volume where it actually makes financial sense to be able to do it. Right now, we're not quite there in terms of having enough old systems to send into that recycling stream.
Okay, we have a question from the audience. This is from Marjorie Floyd. What is the typical time frame for planning purposes for organizations? Energy audit, planning, installation, and are materials back ordered or having supply chain issues at the moment?
I will take that
All
one.
right.
You might have to repeat it though.
Okay, let's do it again. What is the typical time frame for planning purposes for organizations? Now, this is going to include energy audit, planning, and installation. And then the last part is, are materials back ordered or are we having supply chain issues still?
Okay. So for our nonprofits, we try to get them done in a year. So from when they're first given our grant to when they get their last installment. And we usually do it in about 9 months, and yes, we still are having supply chain issues.
All right, thank you. We're going to move back to the Menti questions. What is the best way to communicate with building owners who do not want to retrofit and reduce their emissions?
I think I'll start by saying that I don't know they don't want to. Generally, people are open to the message of wanting to save money, but it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of understanding of some complicated building systems, and it also takes money. And so what happened in our Partners for Green Places program is there was some hand-holding, there was some guiding, there was a very detailed, thick report that they got that helped them understand that cost benefit, the opportunities, which one were the best cost savings, and that way it got them on the road, it got them knowledgeable about which steps made the most sense. And then we also had amazing people like Andy who would be there to answer their questions as they went along that road. And that was important in ways that we knew would be helpful, but we didn't know how critical that was in order to have someone that they trusted, sort of a neutral party who they could ask questions of when it came time to be deciding between contractors or how to really calculate return on investment when there's lots of different things, particularly when demand comes into place. Andy, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I'll add something from the stick perspective, which is that we're based out of Atlanta, and Atlanta has green building requirements for building and for retrofits. So it's another way to do it is the mandates.
All right, the next question is, our church is considering solar, but there is resistance because of possible damage to roof and insurance costs. How would you respond to that?
Okay, so that's a reasonable concern for sure, and what it comes down to is selecting a good contractor. Unfortunately, after Hurricane Ian, as I mentioned, we did not have a lot of issues ourselves in terms of the systems that we installed, but we were probably getting 20 calls a week from folks whose systems were not installed necessarily as well as they should have been. Roof leaks and damage and stuff like that. A well-designed system will not damage the roof. In fact, it actually strengthens the roof from a structural standpoint. You're basically tying into the truss system and knitting it together with an additional layer of structural reinforcement above the surface of the roof. And so the evidence is fairly clear that solar actually does strengthen the roof. In terms of insurance costs, other than the value of the solar array itself, because the solar is a permanently affixed component of the building envelope and it's engineered and permitted by the local building department, there really should not be any additional insurance cost to adding solar. We have had a couple of situations statewide. I actually serve on the the board of FLACIA, which is the State Industry Association. And there have been a couple of insurers who've started to try to deny policies and cancel policies because of people having solar. We're not really sure the reason for it, frankly. The reality is that solar is in many ways stronger than the roof system itself. And what we like to say is that if the solar is going to get damaged, the roof system is going to actually be damaged worse because of just the integrity of those components. And so that's something we're working through right now, but we actually are developing a list of insurance companies that are pro-solar and that are happy to write policies. So.
Just as an example, the system that was installed at Children First was around a $200,000 investment or so, and the increased premium was about $750 a year. So there was an increased premium because there was an increased value in the property, but I think the insurance industry right now is looking for it. Some insurance carriers are looking for opportunities to deny policies or to discontinue policies. So that might just be another opportunity. So you just have to talk to your insurance carrier in advance. That is one of the things that I recommend to people do before they finalize their go-forward plans, is just talk to your insurance carrier and make sure that there's not going to be any surprises there. It should not be a very significant hit overall. The other thing, just as a reminder, and that's that in the state of Florida, even though you get the increased value in the property when you install solar, you do not pay real estate taxes on that increased value. So it doesn't go into the assessment for your real estate taxes.
Just a quick reminder, guys, that if you do have some comment cards or questions, don't be shy. Just write them down, bring them on up here. This next question is for you, Bill, specifically. Are you recommending battery over grid-tiered systems in general, or more geared to disaster situations?
So excellent question. The grid-tied systems in terms of financial payback are definitely going to be better. But I think as a community, as we go forward, I mean, there are definitely some policy considerations here. The state of Florida is sadly woefully behind in terms of utility policy. In other states, they're actually integrating these distributed battery and solar systems into what are called virtual power plants. And I've actually talked about these systems, before, I think actually last time at the sustainability conference. But the idea is you network, 10,000 batteries across a community, and you actually have dispatchable power that can replace a traditional, energy generation plant, whether it's a coal-fired plant or nuclear or whatever. We don't have those kind of policies in Florida yet. And I say yet because it's going to happen. We just have to convince the powers up in Tallahassee that that's the right way to go. So the choice of, whether doing straight grid tie or adding a battery to it really is a personal question, or a question for the organization. Do you have critical operations that you need to protect? And are you, do you currently have fossil fuel generators, that are costing you money and maintenance and fuel costs and, all those kinds of issues? And if you look at it again over, adding in demand savings, adding in the resilience factor and the kilowatt hour savings, the life cycle cost of solar and battery together is actually better. It is more expensive up front, but over the lifespan of the system, it's actually going to save you more money. Whereas a typical, diesel or propane generator never has a positive ROI, ever, right? It is a cost and then more cost. Now there is a value in resilience, but the solar and the battery give you that too. So that's kind of how to look at that.
Okay, next question, Bill, again for you. Very popular. What is the feasibility of solar/battery-powered sewage lift stations? And if possible, comment on hurricane-related spills.
That is a discussion for an entire another day. There is definitely feasibility. But yeah, that's way beyond this conversation.
Gotcha. So what do we got next for the panel? Okay, again, we see solar scammers confusing homeowners. What are the current or immediate future benefits for homeowners, and how can a homeowner make sure they are protected? It's a good one.
Free. Anybody telling you that they're going to put solar on your roof for free is a scammer. It does cost money, and I wish it didn't. I wish we could do it for free. That'd be freaking amazing. But it's not. And now we do offer financing and stuff like that. But it's like any other project on your home. Unfortunately, right now it's kind of the Wild West. There are a lot of scammers out there, and they're making all kinds of claims, like literally you will not have an electric bill after this and stuff. But do your homework. That's really the lesson. Do your homework. Talk to 3 or 4 different local contractors. Make sure they're licensed at the state level. A lot of these companies aren't even licensed. It's really unbelievable.
Yeah, it's helpful to hear Bill say that, and he's very honest about this. And I teach a class on solar, mostly to residents who've been thinking about it for many years, and they just haven't done it yet. And there's a reason, right? It's complicated, it's expensive. And so the class is an hour long, and I talk the whole time. There's a lot to understand. And with the incoming incentives, there's a lot of new opportunities, and therefore a lot of new false claims that you have to be careful about. So the reputable local contractors that you ask, how many of these particular types of systems have you done, get their references, and then understand the policies behind it as well, and what kind of incentives you might be getting, and how that adds to it. Don't just look at the spreadsheet that they give you. Get multiple offers, and understand from your tax advisor what that's going to mean for you and your particular income, not just what they assume in terms of assumptions. So it's complicated, but when it is the right fit, it's really exciting.
Sorry, one more thing to add to that, and that is that Florida is a little different from other states in that in Florida, you're not allowed to have what's called third-party power purchase agreements, and so that's why you can't buy your electricity from a non-utility. So that's why you can't get free solar. So in other states, you still can't get free solar, but you can buy your electricity from a third party, whereas here, a non-utility, whereas here you can't. So that's an important distinction. Each state has their own regulatory structure. So if some of you are considering solar in other states, then different rules would apply.
All right, just a couple more questions before we take a short break. So customers are anticipated to experience significant additional increases to their electric bills next year. How do you see this impacting the issues, programs, and policies the panel has discussed today?
Well, I think it's going to exacerbate the issues, and it will make our programs more attractive. I think people will be much more interested, especially with the hopeful tax credits that they get that sorted. And then policies, I think this is why it's so important that we do focus on the policies. I know that we can control our buildings ourselves, but there are a lot of people who can't. And so I think focusing on the policies to sort of bring everyone up with the equity slide that Lee Hayes showed is really important.
Anyone else?
Well, while Andy's doing his microphone, yeah, mine it's not working either. Yeah, the other thing I would say is, just we see demand for solar and battery, and frankly, all of the technologies, whether it's insulation or LED lights, just exploding. And one of the biggest issues that we're actually facing is workforce development. Hiring and finding skilled people, being able to train them, it is a constant problem. And these are good paying jobs, but we need good people. Yeah, it is. Oh, okay, I thought it was on. Sorry. It's on. Yeah, it's good.
Sorry, Jeff.
Yeah, I think that we're in an environment right now, and for the foreseeable future, that we are probably going to have elevated utility rates. We already saw approximately 20-25% increase over the last year. I'm expecting another, who knows what's going to happen, but it's going to be in the 8 to 15% range probably for the coming year. So those are very, very significant increases, especially for low-income folks. I made a point in my presentation about these the grants that are going to be available through state programs for efficiency improvements. These are going to be very, very significant to the point where low-income households will be able to do very significant retrofits to their homes for low to no cost. So we have to, again, those programs need to get rolled out and put in place, but that's very significant. So to the extent that we're out there in the community involved in those programs, we really need to sort of accelerate them to help the people that really need to get those efficiencies in place.
And I would just make a note, and Bill can comment on this too. Keep an eye on batteries. I always kind of think of batteries in the next 5 to 10 years, how the first 10 years of cell phones were. There's going to be rapid investment and rapid technology changes. They're going to become more affordable, more reliable.
Yeah, absolutely. There we go. Okay. Yeah, as the production of battery cells increases, I think we're going to see a pretty dramatic price decrease in the cost of battery systems. The reality is, if you go back and look at, there's a very interesting presentation by Elon Musk, his Battery Day presentation from about it was like a year and a half or 2 years ago. The scale that we are talking about in terms of production of battery cells is going to increase by multiple orders of magnitude. And what I mean by orders of magnitude is multiple factors of 10. We have to start producing batteries on a global scale in order to achieve the results that we expect to achieve over the next 10 or 20 years. And once we actually are able to do that, we're going to see costs decrease pretty dramatically. So, yeah.
Do we have time for one more question? All right, so what is the biggest challenge you each face when trying to impact our community's renewable energy?
Money.
I would say two things. One is policy. I think there's still, hate to say it, but we're still in Florida. We're pretty backwards on the policy front. And the other thing is for nonprofit organizations that I like to work with, it's bandwidth. This isn't what their mission is. Their mission is delivering meals to young kids. And so help, they can use all the help that they can get. So bandwidth.
So I would add to that, it's, absolutely 100%, and that's why, Andy's support, and again, Partners for, well, that, not as good as the first one, but I'm going to let it slide for a moment, was so helpful to us to have the foundations and the city and the county support us in an area that we benefit greatly from. And then I'll echo the money, but I'll say it slightly differently, and that's finding the donors who recognize the value of the return on investment. Again, that message, reducing our impact on our environment and putting more dollars into mission.
So in extension, our job is education, and so getting our community members to understand all of the complications that come with these technologies, but also the benefits and the return on investment, and really, particularly our new residents, because we get people coming in, moving into town every day, and they bring their knowledge of their previous state, where solar may have been much easier to do. They may be allowed to have power purchase agreements or may have significant incentives from their utilities, and they wonder why the Sunshine State doesn't have more solar on our roofs. And I have to explain to them, okay, so here's what the context is in Florida. Here's the way that we get to solar on our rooftops, but it's different than how you did it in California or Massachusetts or New York.
I would just add one more thing.
Turn it on. There you go.
It's on. I swear. Okay. I would just, the idea of having a champion, for all of these projects, whether it's an efficiency project, insulation or LED lights or, heat pump water heaters. Absolutely. If you don't have a heat pump water heater on your house, you need to go out and get one today. Having that champion, and in Partners for Green Places case, it was Andy. Without Andy's just incredible support and effort and dedication, those projects probably would not have succeeded. And we cannot thank him enough.
All right, well, thank you so much to the panel. That's fantastic information.